Good afternoon, Yukio, and welcome to Design Dialogues hosted by Fablis. This is your host, Bhavya, and today we have the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Yukio Asari, founder of Love Architecture, Tokyo, Japan. Just to give a brief introduction about your studio, Love Architecture is a Tokyo-based design practice specializing in crafting meaningful spaces that seamlessly blend tradition and modern. Their diverse portfolio spans religious, residential, and landscape architecture, each reflecting a deep commitment to cultural sensitivity, sustainability, and innovative design. Some of the key projects, known as the Cemetery and the Carnal House in the Temple, and many more, through meticulous attention to context and materials, Love Architecture creates environments that resonate deeply with both their users and surroundings. Thank you so much for joining us, Yuki.
Um, Nice to meet you.
So before starting the questions, I would like to inform you that this interview will be published on the website of Fablis. So sign up to the Fablis website and you'll get the access to watch this interview. So shall we proceed with the questions? So first question for the day. How would you describe the core ethos of your studio Love Architecture, and how does it guide your approach to creating spaces that balance functionality with aesthetic innovation?
I believe that human process information from the environment in the sequence of sensation, perception, cognition, and behavior. Where functionality and aesthetic information are not processed separately, simultaneously, if both processed by neural circuit, then it is possible to serialize not only functionality in design, but also aesthetics. This pursuit is our philosophy, and we consider it the true essence of modernist design. I don't view environmental information as a contradiction between functionality and aesthetics, but rather as something to be considered simultaneously. Therefore, I don't have the notion that balance need to be struck between the two.
Perfect answer. Talking about one of my favorite projects of yours, the project Azabu Villa aims to blur the lines between the ordinary and the extraordinary in urban living. How do you think this design philosophy contributes to redefining the concept of a home in a densely populated city?
Humans become tired of when they are constantly in extraordinary situations, which is why a home should inherently be a place of the ordinary. At the same time, for urban dwellers in the city like Tokyo, urban space are part of daily life. So home must be a place of rest that offers a non-urban everyday experience. However, I feel that most urban residences pull the city into the home. If the urban daily life is a place for the consumption of visual signs, then home should be the opposite, the place where tactile experiences, ordinary experiences, and visual experiences involving the body are restored. However, the Azabu Villa project is a somewhat unique case among the projects I will design, as it serves as a holy home, making it an exception in terms of its more extraordinary design. What I attempted is the Villa project was overturn the meaning of visual science.
Talking about the same project, this project seamlessly integrates architecture and interior design to create a unique environment. How did you approach the challenge of designing such a borderless and unified space, and what considerations were key in achieving this harmony?
First, we must define architectural design and interior design in relative terms. Architecture design requires rational structural planning and rational equipment planning. So it is defined as overall structural design based on top-down master thinking. It's difficult for users to understand how individual parts are related to each other as a whole. On the other hand, interior design involves closely related adjacent parts. So it's defined as part-to-part relationship design based on bottom-up thinking, where parts are successfully related to each other. This opposition mainly arises from the limitations of human vision. And their reality, the conflict between the two is resolved through temporal experience and memory in the Azabu Villa project by a hierarchical structure of architecture design, interior design, and making everything a part-to-part relationship design. The entire space was seamlessly connected without borders.
So, given the unusual program for this house, blending functions like a wine cave, garage lounge, and the entering spaces, how did you prioritize and design for the flow and usability of these areas? And what role did client input play in shaping these choices?
Each has a minimum required space and conditions for connection between areas. The garage and garage lounge, the costume room and powder room, and karaoke room and entertaining space need to be adjusted to each other. While the party space and the second floor and the outdoor living area need to be connected by stairs. Due to strict legal legislations on the building volume, upper floor gradually decreased in size, which naturally placed in the garage and garage lounge on the first floor. And second floor, where the more space could be secured, was designated for the party space, were resolved by the elevator and the Internet of Things system.
Your portfolio includes a very wide range of typologies from private residences to temples and commercial spaces. What principles remain constant in your approach, regardless of the project type, and how do they reflect your studio's values?
The unchanging principle in my design approach can be summed up as optimization. The goal of design is to optimize for the individual in the case of private residences, to optimize for player in temples, and to optimize for economic success in commercial spaces. My design process involves extensive analysis of people and the environment, and the more detailed the analysis, the easier to becomes to serialize the design process. It's like solving a mathematical problem. And this is why I can work across various design genres, from product to architecture to landscape, since each project has different conditions, such as the environment, purpose, clients, and users, and the designs naturally.
So, moving ahead to another project. So, what inspired the design approach for SYUGOIN, particularly in addressing the challenges of balancing public and private spaces in dense urban environments?
If you spread out the map of Tokyo and color code the areas where one can freely enter buses, those where one cannot, you will see how restrictive the city is, why there are many squares and alleys in the West. I often recall my childhood when I would walk not on the street but on walls owned by others, or pass through gardens owned by others, or moving around the city freely like a cat. If you do that in Tokyo now, you would be reported to the police. However, that memory inspired me to think of creating pathways within private properties, which became an area in the SYUGOIN project.
SYUGOIN was completed in 2013. Looking back, what lessons or insights from this project have influenced your subsequent designs, and especially when working in dense urban areas?
Have worked my best genre of architecture design, but I have continuously worked on the design of rental apartment complexes. Rental apartment complex to detached house have a larger scale, and the relationship between public and private space is ambiguous. So they have a greater impact on the structure of the city. The design concept of common spaces in apartment complex is something I don't particularly like. It can feel gated to outdoors, and to indoors, it may feel like they are being forced to. Since SYUGOIN and the design of rental apartment complexes, I have often planned a zone between the building and the city, where the public and private relationship is ambiguous. These are places where anyone can be or pass through without the need for people to gather. The goal is to fix the opposition between private buildings and public laws.
So, moving ahead, your projects reflect sensitivity to context, materials, and lights. Could you elaborate on how these elements shape your design philosophy and contribute to creating meaningful architectural experiences?
I consider architecture to be a media that counters information. The reception of this information is not only through human vision, but also through other sensory organs, such as hearing, touch, and smell. These senses are interconnected, becoming a perception and are linked to memory, which leads to recognition. In other words, what I'm designing are objects for the senses. Context corresponds to memory. Materials correspond not only to vision but also to hearing, touch, and smell. And light brings this element to life effectively. It is a great way to leave architecture design solely to the manipulation of form. I mobilize all elements to create meaningful architectural experiences.
So, could you elaborate on how the design of Myokoji Temple Osri and the Columbarium balances traditional Japanese architectural elements with contemporary design principles?
In temple projects, there are instances where the design is planned next to an important cultural property. I believe that traditional Japanese temples, which are typically wooden structures, have four key design characteristics. These are symbolic representation, sustain durability of materials, structural rationality, including earthquake resistance due to the wooden construction, especially as a sacred space. Traditional temple architecture often hides its symbolic style, but I believe that this style is the result of the logical pursuit of durability, structural relationality, and especially spirituality as a sacred significantly. The goal is always to design the optimal sacred space within that particular environment. The process of environmental analysis followed by logical construction remains the same as with other projects. Tempest projects represent a modern approach to traditional methods. And while the expression of these two approaches differs, the goal of creating a total squared space ensures that they are not in conflict, nor do they coexist, but rather they complement each other.
So, wrapping up this conversation with the last question for the day. Looking ahead, how do you envision the evolution of your studio's design philosophy in responding to global challenges while staying true to your core ethos? And what legacy do you hope Love Architecture will leave for future generations in the
I feel that
architecture
modern
world?
architecture the heavy bias toward visual information. The trend of social media has further accelerated this, and as architects, we may also be influenced But the question, what kind of architecture stand out on social media? The flood of visual information doesn't bring peace to us humans. I hope that the architecture works of love architecture will help us realize that each building quietly becomes a part of the landscape that brings peace to humans.
So, Yukio, that was the last question for the day. Thank you so much for giving your precious time. It was a pleasure to have you here. And don't forget to sign up on the Fabulous website. Thank you so much.